On July 8, 2014, the Brazilian national team suffered a defeat so total it redefined the nation's vocabulary. They call it the Mineiraço, the Mineirão blow. This chart plots the goal margins of every historical World Cup semifinal. Statistically, these matches cluster between a 0 and 2 goal difference. The 6-goal gap of the 7-1 result exists as an outlier of 5 standard deviations. Analyzing this result requires looking past the pitch. The scoreline was the public dismantling of a decades-long project to link national identity to sporting dominance. Since the 1930s, the Brazilian state has used the national team as a unifying force. By professionalizing the sport and linking it to federal agencies, leaders found a reliable way to manufacture a sense of shared progress. This strategy reached its height under the military dictatorship of General Emílio Garrastazu Médici. The regime viewed the national squad not as athletes, but as state assets. After Brazil won the 1970 World Cup, the squad was brought directly to the Planalto Palace. The military used these celebrations to legitimize their authoritarian rule through the reflected glow of the team's success. For the political elite, the beautiful game functioned as a pressure valve, maintaining social order through the consistent delivery of international prestige. In the early 2000s, President Lula da Silva utilized a booming economy to position Brazil as a modern global power. Winning the right to host the World Cup was the centerpiece of this effort. The government spent $11.3 billion on the tournament, much of it on FIFA standard venues like this stadium in Brasilia, which cost nearly double its original estimate. By 2013, the optics of billion-dollar stadiums neighboring crumbling schools sparked mass riots. Citizens began questioning why a sporting event took precedence over basic public infrastructure. The political establishment needed a tournament victory to justify the expenditure. A trophy was the only way to silence the protesters and prove the billions were well spent. On July 8, 2014, the stadium in Belo Horizon was filled with the weight of that expectation. There was no room for error. Brazil entered the match without their 2 primary structural pillars, their injured star attacker, Neymar, and their suspended captain, Thiago Silva. Manager Luiz Felipe Scolari replaced his missing defenders with more attackers. He ignored tactical discipline, relying on Brazilian exceptionalism and the home crowd. Scolari's reliance on spirit over structural preparation mirrored the government's own approach to the tournament, prioritizing the spectacle of the stadium while ignoring the foundational needs of the defense. The collapse began in the 11th minute. Thomas Müller was left entirely unmarked during a corner, scoring a side-footed shot into an open net. Between the 23rd and 29th minutes, Brazil's formation broke into disconnected sections. Germany exploited these gaps, scoring 4 goals in 6 minutes. Midfielders bypassed Brazil's solitary defensive midfielder with simple passes. The system was designed for an emotional surge, not a technical counterattack. While Brazil descended into panic, the German squad remained clinical. Their persistent game plan focused on exploiting position rather than reacting to the crowd. The disorganized collapse proved that passion is not a substitute for structure. When the pressure hit, there were no institutional foundations to prevent the fall. The distraction evaporated. Within hours of the final whistle, fans were burning flags and setting fire to buses in São Paulo. Even the German players noticed the scale of the trauma. They deliberately muted their celebrations to avoid further humiliating the host nation. The state's primary tool for social control had failed. For the first time in decades, a soccer victory could not be used to mask systemic inequality. The scoreline was absorbed into the culture. In Brazil today, 7-1 is an idiom for any crushing failure, while the phrase "goal for Germany" is an exclamation for everyday mishaps. The defeat preceded a period of historic instability. Within 2 years, the economy contracted. The Lava Jato investigation exposed massive state kickback schemes, and President Dilma Rousseff was impeached. The 7-1 remains a historical warning. It proves that you cannot sustain a modern nation or a world-class team on the hollow energy of a facade. Progress requires more than a stadium.